as being a catalyst and what the future for the city of Worcester is going to look like, and a couple of visionaries here with us. Fred, if I could, I'll start with you. What do you foresee it looking like? I mean, at one point, obviously, 30 years ago, people thought that, hey, what would look great would be to have a mall downtown and keep people downtown and keep them shopping. And I mean, I remember going there the first few Christmases, and everything was exciting. And now, we take a look at it and you go, boy, what were we thinking? I mean, so how do we know what it's going to look like, 30 years?
Well, I think if you look across the country, there has actually been a little bit of resurgence in cities, particularly kind of the mid-sized cities and the more livable cities. And what I think people are talking about more and more is a mixed use, right? So people to live and to work in the city, at the convenience of that, the activity of that. And I think we're perfectly set up for that, actually. Our central location, our size, the arts that we have here, the educational facilities that we have here. And so, to me, we really can be that world-class mid-sized city that's convenient, that's reasonable, that has a lot of activity and action. And I actually think we have a tremendous opportunity here. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think it continues to move in the right direction, and it's pretty exciting, I think.
Mike, the population of Worcester, I mean, people really always talk about Worcester as being a city, but it's also a town, and the connection that they feel to their neighborhood and the way that the neighborhoods all connect in that synergy. If it grows too much, do you lose some of that? Do you worry about, leaving people behind? How does it stay livable? How does it stay Worcester?
Well, I think for all the obvious reasons. You've got engaged leaderships that know our assets. We're not trying to be Protestant or Providence. I think you'll always have that proud tradition of families that have been here for generations that will always remain. They bring a stability to the neighborhoods. But in so many ways, a city's always in the process of adaptation, right? The world's changing around us. Failure to adapt, I mean, you could do some Darwinist formulas there and you'll understand what happens. And so you'll see, the change out, right, as different industries take place here in the city, as existing industries transition to meet the demands of the 21st century. That takes place in and around, and that brings different populations in and out of the community. We'll always have a range of housing need and options. And so that'll always keep a diverse population. It's one of our greatest strengths. We'll always be a melting pot, and I think that'll always be the case going forward. And so I think you're going to see consistency in our city as we strengthen our city by some of these initial investments and things that build off of it. And for all the assets that we have that have kept such stability through time, I think that'll always be a strain through Worcester going forward, always be a positive strain. And then you'll have the growth and the change-outs that take place as a natural part of our economy that will lend to long-term stability and growth.
Yeah, staying with you for a moment, Mr. Manager, because you spoke about the Hanover Theater, have we seen some of the spin-off? I mean, is this a sign of the economy that we haven't yet really seen retail spring up along Franklin Street? There's retail space there, or what we might see along Front Street, particularly when we begin to see the CitySquare project get underway the next few years. I mean, is that part of where we need, because we're kind of talking about what government has been able to do and some big players have been able to do, but this is the other part of the equation. We've seen it in the Canal District, or we've seen it on Shrewsbury Street. We need that to come downtown. That's coming?
Fred gives some great examples of his work throughout the country in Atlanta and Denver and other places. And there's formula that can be applied to this. It's when you have a downtown that begins to see market rate housing come to bear and a certain number of market rate apartments and condominiums, there's a need for services, right? There's someone that wants to be able to walk out of their apartment building or condo and be able to get to a dry cleaner, be able to go into a wine and cheese shop, and those kind of activities. And so you'll see that begin to take place. Mayo's making significant investments in the old Bancroft Nissan, on the old arena along Portland and Salem Street. And these are market rate condominiums with the kind of amenities that would be expected by someone paying market rate. Stainless steel appliances, granites, hardwoods, and the like. And they're seeing great interest from young urban professionals coming out of Boston, traveling into Boston every day, from professors and faculty here in our community, and from empty nesters, people that are taking up residence in the old Bancroft Hotel, as well as these new units that they're bringing online. That's hitting, just in his development alone, hitting enough critical mass. He's looking at putting a gymnasium online. He's looking at putting some type of middle to high-end supermarket in place. Those reasons create the dynamic of retail coming back. And then with the greater presence of new commercial activity in downtown, those in the businesses here in downtown seeking services, all that builds upon itself. You just can't create retail and say build it and they'll come.
Right.
It has to be the sum of the parts that make it work.
Yeah, it does seem a little like a chicken and egg. I mean, I do think that a supermarket obviously is something that a lot of people would need right downtown, but I do see that population changing. I see those white coats from the folks from the pharmacy college that are all downtown. Now, I do see what seems to be a lot more college students living in those Mayo-owned buildings, for example, right downtown on the Common. But I also, when I go to the Hanover Theater, sometimes I'll come walking out, I'll hear people from out of town go, okay, where are we going for dinner? And I'll say, you know, Viva Benny's not that far away or whatever. But they want to go like across the street, or they want to go right next door.
And it is, to me, you know, these things don't happen overnight, but if you had gone through this last 2 years of tough economic times, my guess is our restaurants wouldn't have done so well if the theater hadn't been there over the last couple of years. So we've seen some spin-off, but this notion of critical mass and of people living downtown and coming downtown, it's to me what's very interesting is you got to remember that CitySquare, one of the reasons it's a catalyst is this was a big overhang because nobody knew if it was going to happen, right? So one of the things that has held things back is if you're you own buildings or you're going to invest in a building and you're going to have this big albatross that's going to sit there for the next couple of years. So my view is what has happened just in the last few weeks is now all these folks are much more interested. You're seeing a lot more activity, people talking. Why? Because they know what's going to happen. Matter of fact, you've seen in the towers a lot of people extend their leases all of a sudden. I think that's been interesting, right?
Yeah.
And that has stabilized, and that's because people now know the risk is a lot less and that they are moving forward. And it's a very kind of interesting time because I think this stuff is going to start picking up.
What do you think about this mental barrier, that somehow it was sort of a mental barrier? Is there truth to that?
Absolutely. Again, I think that our city is wonderful in that it has a wonderful memory. But in the same token, it sometimes makes things difficult because people, this talk of the silver bullet, and they say they'll talk about things that we're supposed to save everything. Well, I'm not sure that's really the way the world works. And because I grew up here, of course, and spent my life here, and then went away, and then came back, I have such a different perspective because what's happening here, I don't think people that live here see all the connections between all the things that have happened. I mean, the medical profession, what has happened over at UMass and Plantation Street is an amazing thing. I mean, if you look at the biotech stuff, et cetera. So for me, when I look at all of this, I say, yep, okay, it's not all here, but clearly the progress is so obvious. The commitments of the schools to the city, you see it almost every day now, something happening. So it's good. I feel good about it. And you asked earlier about our employees. What's happening now is our employees are more and more interested. We're part of this program of buying in Worcester. A few of our employees have bought houses now in Worcester. And people are getting much more interested in staying than living halfway between here and Boston, which to me is, again, a good indication of things are starting to happen.
Absolutely. Mr. Manager, we're just dead out of time, but Worcester, city on the move. You started to say it those years ago. People have picked up on it, and boy, it sure is true with so much going on. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And congratulations to you and the Hanover Insurance Group for all that you're doing for the city as well. Thank you for watching us right here on the Hank Stolz Experience. Coming up, we're going to tell you about a great program that's coming up about how you can find out more about your ancestors if you are of Swedish ancestry, and that's coming up at the library, and we'll tell you about it straight ahead.